The Houston Rockets continue to push the Golden State Warriors for that final play-in spot. And with the recent ejection by Draymond Green and the comments from Tari Eason, it's taken on a whole new outlook. We're going to look at that last spot, that play-in race for that last spot in the Western Conference. And we're going to take a look at the players returning from injury across the playoff teams in the NBA and ask which player is going to have the most impact on their team running the playoffs. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
Welcome to the number one place for your daily basketball news and analysis, NBA Central.
What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome to another episode of NBA Central, your number one spot for everything basketball related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it for today. And so I want to start off with the Golden State Warriors and Houston Rockets. And this has been something that I've talked about a lot over the last week or so because it's just an interesting race for me. You know, the play-in was created to provide a kind of some interest there on teams that would have originally been outside the play-in, and to add a couple of more games, generate some more revenue, right? Those are always parts and aspects of adding things like this that matter. But this year it's really become interesting with the Houston Rockets now on a 10-game winning streak, right? That's the longest streak in the NBA now. They have the longest winning streak they have now with a 10-game winning streak, which has now pushed them to be only one game behind the Golden State Warriors, which have their own 2-game winning streak going on, but they're 5-5 in their last 10. And recently Draymond Green came out and said that, nobody gives a damn about the Rockets. Well, clearly now you need to be given a damn. On top of Draymond Green getting kicked out in a ejection, kind of arguing with a ref in the last game, the Houston Rockets are now 37-35. They've won 10 straight games that we talked about before. Tari Eason has returned for that team, and he said this after their most recent win: Warriors come out to play. It's great to see kind of, this competition again in the NBA. I won't lie. It's something that we don't see verbally a lot of, right? And to have a young player like Tari Eason on a fairly young team, yeah, they got veterans in Dylan Brooks and Van Vliet down there. But outside of that, a really young team that's pushing a team that has been one of the better teams over the last decade in the Golden State Warriors. And yeah, they're on the decline. They're at the end of that dynasty. But it's just really interesting to see and have this storyline on the back half of the season. And this has just made it more fun over these last 10 games or so for most teams in the NBA. This run between the Rockets and the Warriors is going to be one of the more interesting races to watch here as the season ends, because the Warriors could very well miss the play-in this season. Now, one could say that the Warriors missing the play-in may be the better thing for them to come crashing down to reality, but when you have Draymond Green continually doing just foolish things to put his team in a worse spot, on top of that, Jonathan Kuminga, who's going to be missing at least multiple days per Steve Kerr, not a major injury, but he's going to be sitting down multiple games with that knee tendonitis that's there. This is going to be really interesting to watch and see how it shakes out. The Golden State Warriors play a Friday night against the Charlotte Hornets, and very well, if the Houston Rockets continue their run, we could see, for at least right now, right? It's going to be going on for as close as this race is, it's going to be going on for the rest of the season. But as early as Friday, we could very well see the Houston Rockets, as they also play the Utah Jazz on Friday, we could see them pass up the Golden State Warriors for that 10th and final spot in the Western Conference play-in race. And again, they'll have to keep playing well to hold on to it if they even get that. But this is one of the more interesting battles, in my opinion, to watch as the season ends. You guys can let me know how you feel about it down below. But, especially with Draymond acting like nobody's worried about the Rockets, he needs to be worried about the Rockets right now. But outside of that, we had a number of returns or pending returns kind of announced yesterday. The first one is that Joel Embiid has now moved to basically the last step, and that there's a good chance that Joel Embiid will return before the playoffs. Initially kind of announced that he'd be back towards the beginning of April. He's missed 27 straight games, and he went down actually in a game against the Golden State Warriors. He was averaging a career best in a lot of ways. 35.3 points per game, 5.7 assists per game, 11.3 rebounds per game. Before Joel Embiid went down, he was the leader for MVP for a lot of people. Who's definitely in that race otherwise. And when you look at them right now, they've lost 2 games in a row. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They right now have only a half game behind the Miami Heat. for that 7 seed and 1.5 games behind the Indiana Pacers to avoid the play-in for that 6 seed. They do have a 4-game advantage over the Chicago Bulls. We're at the 9th seed, so it's not really a huge risk of the Philadelphia 76ers falling anywhere out of the play-in. They'll be in the play-in tournament. But if Joel Embiid comes back with a week plus left in the season, we could see a way more interesting race between them, the Miami Heat, and the Indiana Pacers to see which one of those teams are going to avoid the play-in tournament. Now, the Philadelphia 76ers are 4-6 in their last 10, the same mark by the Indiana Pacers. By the Miami Heat. The Pacers are actually 6-4 in their last 10, but this could become a very interesting race as well in the Eastern Conference. It's already interesting between the Pacers and the Miami Heat. There's a game that's separating those guys, but it could become a 3-team race to see who's going to avoid that play-in with Joel Embiid on the precipice of coming back here within the next week or so. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm sure that everybody and 76ers fans are excited at the potential to get Joel Embiid back, and we'll see what happens with that. Now, another player that returned that's coming back is Gabe Vincent for the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, he hasn't played a whole hell of a lot this season, but when you look at where the Lakers are right now as well, the Lakers are in the 9th seed in the Western Conference playoffs. They have a 2.5-game advantage over the Golden State Warriors and a 3.5-game advantage over the Houston Rockets that are competing for the 10th seed, which we talked about before. But this could be a really good time to get Gabe Vincent back, to kind of shore him up, get him healthy. He's been out of the lineup since December 20th right now. And when you look at it, they're holding on to the 9th seed. They have some potential. They're only 2.5 games back of the Dallas Mavericks for the 6th seed, 2 games behind the Phoenix Suns for the 7th seed, and 1.5 games behind the Sacramento Kings for the 8th seed. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that Gabe Vincent can come back and really provide a much-needed shot in the arm over these last couple of games, last handful of games for the Los Angeles Lakers. The key thing is just what impact is he going to make? We know he was a very good role player for that Miami Heat team last season. The averages don't really jump out at you, but he had really good totals for them, played really well for them overall. And, the Lakers need as much depth as possible. And while the Lakers haven't been playing terribly by any stretch of the imagination, getting help back and to get a player back in rhythm before the end of the season and leading into the play-in, or, can help push them to maybe avoid the play-in, is going to be big. The Lakers right now are riding a 5-game winning streak. They've gone 7-3 in their last 10. Already talked about it, 41 wins right now. And they're not out of the realm of maybe getting to avoid the play-in. Now, the Western Conference is a monster, right? When you look at it, the 10th seed in the Western Conference is the Golden State Warriors right now with 38 wins. That 38 wins would have that same team at about the 8th seed, in the Eastern Conference. So, it's just how the West is going. But getting a healthy player back for any team, especially a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, which really wants to try to use its depth to go over the last bit of the season, is going to be important for them. And then on top of that, we got another player that's returning for a playoff team, and that's the New York Knicks. And Mitchell Robinson's returned for that team. He's already played a game for the New York Knicks. They sit right now as the 3rd team in the Eastern Conference. They're going to make the playoffs, so that's not really any type of question there. They've won 3 games in a row. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They got 44 wins on the season, but getting Mitchell Robinson back in rhythm before you start the playoffs is going to be a big thing. Before the injury that Mitchell Robinson went down with, he was having a career year for him. 6.2 points per game, 10.2 rebounds per game, 1.3 blocks per game. That was in the 21 games that he played, and he was averaging more offensive rebounds, which generates extra possessions than anybody else in the league, averaging 5.3 offensive rebounds per game. So Mitchell Robinson can definitely help that team as far as the rim protection, rebounding part of it. He needs to do even less now as far as scoring-wise than when he went down, considering them adding OG Anunoby to that team. And in his first game back, didn't play a whole hell of a lot. 12 minutes played. He had, in that he had 8 points, 2 rebounds, 2 block shots in a little over 12 minutes played. So again, having his length, having his rim protection there could do really wonders for the New York Knicks as they look to keep, making a push and to solidify them trying to make a run in the playoffs this upcoming year. And the Knicks, while I don't think anybody really has Knicks pegged as a team that can maybe come out the East, they are a team that can definitely go far in the East. And, who's to say? It all comes down to matchups. And, that's going to be big for this team as well. So having Mitchell Robinson come back, having him have some time to get back healthy, to get back acclimated, could be really big for that team. You add Isaiah Hartenstein as well, who's also averaging 1.2 blocks per game. That could be really big for this New York Knicks team. So getting Mitchell Robinson back healthy is definitely going to help give them as well a shot in the arm as they look to make their run for the playoffs as well. And so, when really kind of looking at that, when you look at Mitchell Robinson, Gabe Vincent, Joel Embiid, which one of these teams is going to be boosted most by their return? It's easy to say Joel Embiid, and that makes a lot of sense. They have a lot of ground to make up. If you get Joel Embiid fully healthy by the playoffs, that's another team that can go far. Regardless of where their roster is, you have an MVP candidate on that roster that's going to make everything so much easier for everybody else. But I also look at Mitchell Robinson for a team that added OG Anunoby to it, that needs some depth, especially at the big man position. His ability to generate more possessions via those offensive rebounds, I think could be huge for that team as well. And it's going to be fun to see. Now, we did also have an announcement on an injury that LaMelo Ball actually will not be making his return this season at all. They just went ahead and ruled him out for the remainder of the last few weeks of the season. And when you look at the Charlotte Hornets, man, that just kind of plays into what we've seen the Hornets do. They are one of the most, whether you call it unlucky or inept franchises in the NBA, whatever words you want to use there. It's just something always seems to happen. Now, over this time since he's been gone, of course, you've had things like Brandon Miller really step up, play much better. They got decisions that they need to make. What's going to happen with Miles Bridges, things like that. Mark Williams has also been out for this team. But this is going to be a team that now goes forth into the into the postseason, looks to see what they're going to draft. Maybe they can add more talent to that team. But this is a team that has a lot of young, solid talent. They added Trey Mann to that team as well. And we'll see what this team is going to be going forward in the long run. But I still like a lot of the pieces of the Charlotte Hornets roster. But, you got to ask yourself, what does it really look like? And should the Hornets start preparing or building the team without necessarily factoring Melo into a degree, right? You're always, with Melo's talent, always going to factor it in. But he just can't stay healthy. So you want to make sure you build a solid team even without LaMelo. Unfortunately, the Chicago Bulls have had to do a similar thing with Lonzo, his brother. So, we'll see what happens there. But guys, let me know your thoughts on everything down below. Specifically, which one of the injured players returning to their team that's fighting for playoff spots do you think is going to have the biggest impact on that team? And then on top of that, who do you have coming out the Western Conference or getting that last playing spot in the Western Conference, the Golden State Warriors or the Houston Rockets? Let me know all that down below. Make sure you're following the show at NBA Central Pod on every social media platform. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, NBA Central Show at gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. We're the number one spot for everything basketball related. And like I like to end every episode on, I'll see you guys the next time I feel like making a video. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.